what's the likelihood that John Mark wrote the Gospel of Mark in our New Testament?
So here's what I believe. You don't have to agree with me, but here's where I land. I think there's a decent likelihood that it is authored by a second generation Christian named Mark. By second generation, I mean someone who was not there at the beginning, so not an apostle who walked around with Jesus, someone who heard these things secondhand and then wrote them down. I date the Gospel of Mark to around the year 70, so someone who potentially could have been alive during the ministry of Jesus, but was not around for it, who was not a part of that first, who hears it all secondhand. And the reason that I say that is because if you were making up from scratch an author of a gospel, you would not choose John Mark. You would not choose someone named Mark. That's not who you would. You would choose a first generation Christian and likely an apostle, right? You would want someone who was there at the beginning, who was with Jesus, and you would likely want someone with a big name. So, like a John, or maybe even like a Matthew, but like Matthew is not one of the best known apostles. And if your Mark is connected to Peter, but if you were making up a name, you would just call it Peter. You would choose Peter's a great choice for a name of a gospel. He was the most important apostle, probably. He was there from the very beginning. He was given the keys to the kingdom, Jesus said, right? That would be a great person to say, well, Peter wrote it, not, well, there's this guy named Mark that we really don't know anything about, but we believe that he knew Peter and he was the guy who wrote it.
Yeah.
Not very likely that you would make that up. So that seems to suggest to me that there's a decent likelihood that someone by the name of Mark, who is a second generation Christian, wrote it. If it was written by a Mark, though, it is very difficult to say who this Mark was or whether or not he had any connection to Peter. So I would say you wouldn't make up the name Mark, but just the name Mark doesn't get us all that close to an author. As I've said, it was a very common name.